Demoted. Silver Gleam. Silver Gleam nervously paced back and forth in front of the throne room doors, his armored shoes clicking against the marble floor. The royal guard bit his lip as he debated on whether or not he should just cut his losses and run with his tail between his legs. Maybe start a new life in Vancouver under a new name and... shaking his head, the unicorn stallion pushed that thought aside. No. Wanting to run away at the first sign of anger was precisely what had gotten him into this mess. If he wanted to keep his job, then he'd need to pony up and start standing strong in the face of danger. Taking a deep breath, he mustered up all of his courage and stood proudly. I can do this.
Silver Gleam?
Nope, I can't. With a loud gulp, Silver Gleam turned at the double doors to the throne room slowly opening, revealing none other than Princess Celestia standing at the end of the room and staring at him. Doing his best to look composed, Silver began the slow walk towards the princess. Once he had cleared the doorway, the doors slammed shut behind him, sealing him inside what was his looming fate. His hooves felt like lead weights as he trotted up to the princess, stopping before her and leaning down into a bow. You wanted to see me, Your Highness?
Yes, I did.
Gesturing for him to rise, she held up a scroll in her magic.
I was going over your recent evaluation, and I couldn't help but notice some... issues.
Silver winced at the disapproving tone in the princess's voice when she said she had issues.
According to your commanding officer, you've been repeatedly caught having abandoned your post, failing your standard gear and armor maintenance checks, and several times having fallen asleep at your post. As one of my royal guards, I trust that you will be vigilant at all times to catch any threats towards the citizens of Canterlot. But it seems my trust has been misplaced in you.
Silver felt like a young colt being reprimanded by his mother, hanging his head in shame.
After seeing this report, and taking everything into consideration, I'm afraid actions must be taken to ensure you learn proper discipline. As such, I've decided that, as of today, you will be demoted from the ranks of Royal Guard.
Silver Gleam's head snapped up to stare in horror at the princess. Demoted? But... Before Silver Gleam could utter a word in his defense, a swirl of the princess's magic began to wrap around him, making his coat tingle. In an instant, he felt himself shrink slightly, losing several inches of height as his armor hung off of his diminished body. As a lock of hair entered his vision, he looked up to find his mane growing as he got smaller, blue bangs beginning to drape down with his forehead. His armor began to feel much lighter as it changed from steel to a silky fabric, fading in color until the gold had become a velvety black.
My armor?
Silver Gleam squeaked, a hoof shooting into his mouth as the voice that came out of his mouth sounded less like a stallion and more like a young mare. His eyes widened in terror as he realized what the princess intended to do to him.
No,
she squeaked as the transformation progressed further and further, her uniform changing into a black lace dress with white ruffles that drape over her rump, while her helmet had turned into an equally and frilly headdress.
Ow!
Silver winced as she felt a tug against her mane, watching out of the corner of her eye as her two-toned blue mane was carefully braided and tied together with a nice bow.
There, all done,
the princess said as she admired her work. The stallion that had once been standing before her had now been transformed into a short and adorable mare, dressed in the black maid outfit of the cleaning staff. Silver was in a state of shock, flopping down onto her rump as she stared wide-eyed at the black slippers now onto her hooves, looking herself over at what her laziness had done to her. And just when it looked like she might burst out into tears in the middle of the throne room, she felt a hoof on her shoulder. Looking up, she found Princess Celestia looking down at her, a warm smile on her face that instantly made the newly transformed mare feel safer.
I know. This must be very hard for you, but I want you to try and see this as a learning experience. If you can show me that you can do a good enough job as a maid, then I'll consider letting you back into the Royal Guards. Okay?
With a sniffle, Silver wiped the building tears away as she nodded her head.
Okay. Good. Now please report to the maid quarters to receive your new assignment, Silver Gleam. Oh, and do hurry. It wouldn't be good to be late on your first day, now would it?
Celestia said with a small titter. Silver Gleam blushed and she turned and walked back towards the throne room doors, still reeling a bit from her sudden transformation and new assignments.
Oh, I hope that none of the guys hear about this. They'll never let me hear the end of it.
Auburn Gust. Hey, look over there. Auburn Gust glanced towards his fellow guard, Star Victory, without moving from his post, noticing him pointing across the room. Following where the unicorn was pointing, the Pegasus noticed one of the maids cleaning the windows. Yeah, it looks like one of the maids. What about it? Doesn't she look kind of, familiar? Squinting, Auburn gave the mare a second glance. Now that you mention it, yeah, she does kind of look familiar. I can't quite put my hoof on how, though. I think she's new. Only started seeing her a few days ago. I guess. Auburn couldn't take his eyes off of the mare as she cleaned, the nagging feeling in the back of his head that he had seen her somewhere before. She kind of reminds me of... His eyes widened as the pieces in his head finally fitted together. No way, that's... Silver Gleam hummed to herself as she finished cleaning the windows, smiling at her reflection in the glass. Despite her initial apprehensions about going from being a member of the guard to a member of the cleaning staff, Silver had taken to her new role with gusto. Sure, it was a lot of hard work, but there was a certain relaxing rhythm to it that made her want to do her best. After all, the princess had encouraged her to take this as a learning experience, and she had certainly learned a lot. Satisfied that the windows were now clean, Silver Gleam was prepared to start in the row in the nearby hallway. However, she was suddenly stopped by a wing blocking her path, squeaking in fear at the commanding voice of the guard shouting. "Hold it!"
Is something wrong?
She stuttered, glancing up at the guard. Auburn smiled devilishly as he looked down at the mare. "You tell me, Silver Gleam." Silver's face fell at the sound of her name. So far, she had managed to avoid being identified by her former guards, but it seems her luck had finally run out. Oh, don't act dumb. We all heard about the guard who got demoted the other day, even if we weren't sure what it meant. Now it all makes sense. Auburn laughed as he looked over the trembling mare in front of him. Gotta say, your new uniform looks ridiculous. Silver blushed, holding a hoof against her uniform front.
I kind of like it.
That only prompted Auburn to laugh even harder. Ha! I always freaking knew that you were a big wuss. Now you've got the clothes to match it. I wouldn't be caught dead wearing something like that. Silver looked away in shame as Auburn only continued to laugh at her, making her feel even smaller than she already was. As luck would have it, Celestia had been walking through the halls of the castle when she heard the sound of laughter from nearby. Curious, she walked over to find one of her guards antagonizing her new maid, arriving just in time to hear him say, "I wouldn't be caught dead wearing something like that." She frowned, having half a mind to go reprimand the guard pony for bullying the poor mare, when a mischievous little idea suddenly popped into her head. Smirking, she lit her horn and she began to cast a spell. Auburn? Star Victory attempted to warn the Pegasus as he spotted a swirl of sun-yellow magic begin to wrap around his fellow guard pony, but Auburn was too busy laughing to notice. Silver Gleam had, however, and her face scrunched up as she watched the Pegasus begin to shrink as his armor began to transform. Within moments, the Pegasus was no taller than Silver Gleam, their armor quickly transforming into a matching black lace maid's uniform. Within a matter of seconds, the transformation was complete, but Auburn still hadn't noticed. "Auburn!" Star shouted, finally getting Auburn Gust's attention.
What?
Auburn froze at the sound of her voice, placing a hoof against her throat as she realized that the voice had come from her was her own.
What?
Looking herself over, Auburn was horrified to find herself wearing a maid's uniform in place of her golden armor.
What happened to... Good morning, my little ponies.
Celestia greeted as she walked by them, making sure to meet Auburn's eyes.
I thought I heard some pony insulting the uniforms for the cleaning staff. Perhaps some time spent wearing it will help you better appreciate the uniform more.
Looking to Star Victory, she asked,
"Do you have anything to say about the uniforms?"
Star Victory quickly snapped into a salute, sweat dripping down his face as he hastily replied, No, ma'am."
Good. Silver Gleam, would you please escort Miss Auburn Gust to the maid's quarters so she can receive her assignment?
Still trying to hold back her laughter, Silver just nodded her head in response. As Celestia walked away, all Auburn Gust could muster was just...
What?